Welcome to Profiteers versus the People, the show where we punch up and dispel myths surrounding modern great men and women and non-binary people and other genders and pronouns. We don't discriminate here, but we do dispel myths.
Yeah, we throw our fist up, and whatever it hits, we consider that a victory, pretty much.
Yeah.
For the uninitiated, we take the very rich, particularly those with a media presence, like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or the Mowbrays down in New Zealand, and put them through our PR torture test and see if they come out on crutches, which is our PR torture test acronym.
Yes, and crutches, the C stands for consumer harm. R for rich parents, U for union suppression and employee abuse, T for tax evasion, often disguised as charity, the second C for child labor, H for harassment allegations, E for egregious behavior after hours, and S for slap suits and journalist suppression. I'm Money Mike.
And I'm Rad Bill.
And
okay, so in this episode, we're not going to be doing any of the crutches stuff. We may be late to the game here, and also dorks who don't get invited to very many parties. So, if we're insulated from lively discourse on this, play along. Despite everything I've just said, I'm still surprised that it's taken me this long to begin hearing about Kratom all over the damn place. Money Mike, I don't know if you've heard about it more than I have.
yeah, when we were talking about, the subject of this episode, I spent a fair amount of time in recovery circles, and Kratom's a pretty hot topic for mostly bad reasons. But yeah, so I'm fairly familiar with what it is, how it's marketed, and kind of what it does to people. And to illustrate that for all of our lovely listeners who don't know what Kratom is, I'm going to tell you a fun little story about our dearest Rad Bill. So, let's suppose that Rad Bill is preparing for a big night on the town with his wife. So, as is his custom, he goes to his local head shop to procure a couple of their finest boner pills. He needs to make sure that he can go all night with his lovely lady after all. While perusing the counter, he notices a section called Kratom that contains colorful packages of pills, grounds that can be brewed into tea, even prepackaged energy drinks. Looking at the labels of one of these teas, he sees promises of chill times and good vibes, and no warning label of side effects or anything not chill. And because Rad is a lover of both chill times and good vibes, he decides to purchase some of this funky tea instead of his boner pills and heads home. He then goes to where he lives, which is under a bridge, with his wife, a feral cat. He starts a small fire in a trash can and suspends a water bottle over that fire, which comes to a boil before he sprinkles the grounds in to make this tea. After drinking a little of the tea and waiting about 10 minutes, Rad Bill begins to feel euphoric, energized, and no longer horny at all. In this state of mind, the longest he could keep it up is a few seconds at best. The cat got off easy. So then, he drinks the whole damn bottle. Suddenly, the energetic high gives way to something a lot more relaxing. All is well with the world. Rad's feet no longer hurt. He's no longer anxious, and supposedly, if he were suffering from opioid withdrawals, they would have subsided to some degree. This is going to last about as long as a weed high, and the feeling will be pretty comparable to an opiate high that lasts around 3 to 5 hours. Energized by his recent discovery, he then decides to go back and purchase some pills, and starts taking them every day before his job as a chimney sweep. His blackened lungs feel a little lighter when he's on those Roxy Kratom pills. However, as time goes on, Rad's tolerance builds. Soon, all of his chimney sweep money is going towards Kratom energy drinks. His wife, the feral cat, tells him it's her or the Kratom. Realizing what he's become, Rad flushes the pills down their toilet, which is a small creek that runs under their bridge house. He's done. He loves his feral cat wife more than anything. They fall asleep in each other's arms, feeling safe and secure. But alas, the next morning, Rad awakens with a start. He's sweating bullets, everything hurts, and all he can think about is the sweet kiss of those Kratom energy drinks on his lips. He begins running to the head shop. Oh, it's so close. Only a block away. He can feel the tingle now. He turns the corner, just across the street. Oh God, he didn't see the cement truck. Bam! And that's the end of Rad Bill.
Anyways, while researching opioids for the Sackler episodes, there was this catch-22 we kept running into in online discourse, and it's a brick wall. Here it is. Why don't we ban opioids or limit access to them? And then the second person says, and what? Make all the people who rely on them for pain management suffer?
And yet, they're right. Pandora's box is open. And suffering prevented by opiates and caused by opiate withdrawal is a societal double-edged sword that we could inflict pain upon millions depending on which way we swing it. And also, we spent a decent amount of time during our last episode decrying the war on drugs and how ineffective anti-substance legislation tends to be. Yeah. So how do we curb these dependency problems and the issues surrounding it without a bunch of legislation that tends to unjustly target certain demographics?
Or make that sword swing one way or the other, especially violently. As a non-expert, the best solution I can come up with is this. Anyone who has a dependency issue is granted indefinite paid leave from society and all the associated responsibilities, and given access to expert care and all the cessation aids money can buy for free. Beyond this, prescription of the drug is tightly regulated and reserved only for those with pain that can't be addressed by other means or meds. Rinse, repeat. That plan probably costs $10 trillion.
Yeah. That creates some societal dilemmas. Taxes will go up.
For sure. So for everyone who's got a bone to pick about taxes, this would not be popular. But, in theory, it'd work. No problem that doesn't cost money to fix. There's always this insidious third voice in the room, though, which says something like, opioids are the greatest medical achievement in human history. Why do we all have to suffer? Because a few people choose to abuse them. Now, this sounds similar to the but banning it will make people suffer argument, except really, this one is defending the product over the people. And to this, I want to make 2 points. Firstly, in case we didn't make this clear in our series on the Sacklers.
Check out our series on the Sacklers. We talk about this at length.
Yes, we do. If fire's the most effective way to clear a path in the woods, but it runs a high risk of burning down the whole forest and killing one of your children, that means it's stupid and dangerous as a solution, and anyone on the forest's edge selling accelerants needs to get hauled off to jail, especially if they're assuring people it's safe. But fire's the greatest invention of all mankind. Fuck you, dude. That doesn't mean we have to use it for everything.
Yeah, and the key there in that example is disclosure.
Yep.
Right? So if we're saying that fire is the greatest invention in human history, but it's also very dangerous, and we need to take extreme precaution when utilizing it, that's a different story than this fire is completely safe and you can overprescribe the fire. I feel like I'm kind of getting out of the metaphor now. But to boil it down, the product is being sold to people who become victims because it's sold with lies and misinformation. And when companies that sell these products fight regulations, they're not fighting regulations on behalf of the people who need it. They are fighting regulation for their own bottom line at the expense of the people who are burned by the fire. Going back to the original metaphor, it demonizes the victims and places the blame on them when in reality it's the people not putting the right labels on the accelerants.
Yep. Thank God fire's not something you can prescribe. Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. Second, this is a slightly veiled version of the guns don't kill people, people kill people talking point. And Money Mike, you just talked on this. But this is more nefarious. When used in this case, it's blaming the victim in defense of the product.
Right. It's the guns don't kill people, stupider evil people get killed by perfectly innocent guns that are a societal net good.
Yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. To one degree, though, the people saying this are right. It isn't the drug's fault. The drug's an inanimate object. It's their fault. The narrative that these people are circulating stealthily implies, I would never let this happen to me, though. And that allows the drug to stay, allows the fires to keep burning, and it assures those who would otherwise speak up when the fire reaches someone in their periphery, if it wasn't this, that person would have found their way into some other form of trouble.
Right.
Thus, the fire burns, and the victims, incidentally none of the above people, carry on dying horribly. Obviously, this is the fault of the executives getting rich off of this stuff for introducing these stupid and evil solutions to the world, but to some extent it's my fault. It's our fault when something like this happens for not making a racket about it when it hits the market.
If something like this is addressed properly, it means people are screaming and yelling about it, and Pandora's box never opens all the way. But the problem is, especially with pharmaceuticals, we're not doctors.
Yeah.
When my doctor told me the side effects to a drug that I was recently prescribed, I had to just believe him.
Yeah.
My dad was like, oh, I read this article that this kind of drug might cause dementia. And it's one of those things like I can shrug my shoulders and say, maybe? I don't know.
It's above my pay grade. Yeah.
I can ask my doctor. But if my doctor says no and is either lying to me or is misinformed by whoever is peddling the drug, then I really quickly fall into the do my own research crowd. And that's not a crowd I want to be in. I
don't want to be. Fuck that, dude. I don't want to be in that crowd.
Then you start like storming the Capitol and stuff like that.
That's it. And here is one thing about Kratom that's different is your doctor's never going to say, got it. You know what would fix that constipation pretty well is Kratom.
Yeah.
Your doctor's not prescribing Kratom. He's not going like, go to the head shop and pick up Cheech and Chong's newest Kratom product. That'll do the trick.
The clerk at the gas station is not the person that I look to for medical advice.
So, could something like Kratom be a nothing burger? Yes. Hopefully this is an overreaction and it fizzles or people just get over it. Could we sound like crackpots making a whole episode about it? Yeah, definitely. And our audience is small, relatively speaking. But if just one of you smacks a friend in the face when they say they want to go buy some Kratom, this was worth it. And to ensure that such an intervention can occur, we're going to go ahead and make the episode.
Yeah, that's what this episode is going to be about. This is the Kratom episode. And it's going to be shorter because we're gearing up for the next series. But we're talking a little bit about what Kratom is, what it does, the threats it poses, and how it's proliferating. And well, hopefully by the end of it, you might be a little more scared of it than you are now.
Yeah, be afraid of this shit. It's scary. Now, crucially, we're not going gonzo for this. I'm not doing Kratom. I haven't done Kratoms. First-hand experience ain't part of this. Gonzo's off the table because we don't know exactly what Kratom is. And we'll get to this, but it doesn't seem like anyone knows what Kratom is.
And that said, this podcast is not anti-drug. We don't want to sound like the fucking mom group on Facebook, saying, is your kid on Kratom? No. But, we like to keep our readers informed about things that might cause consumer harm.
Yeah, that's like one of our things.
Yeah, this seems to get the C pretty definitively.
This is first C all the way. Yeah, drugs are cool. Just be responsible and maybe use the party ones when you're all grown up. Let that noodle yours form all the way before you begin changing it manually. In our first attempt at an episode, which was never released because it wasn't very good, we both got on and took a stab at what we in the biz call banter. With immense concentration, I took a stab at making what's called a joke that sounded unrehearsed industry term. And it wasn't great, and it was about how addicted I was to vaping. And then Money Mike lovingly responded in solidarity, offering reflection on how addicted he was to the damn thing. We had a big fake laugh. Ha 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 ha. Oh God, we're funny. And then moved into the part where we covered our subject, and the rest is history. Filthy, dirty, never to see the light of day history. Now, we were both addicted to those.
Addicted. Oh my God.
Oh my
Dog.
God.
I have quit a lot of drugs. I quit all the drugs. In fact, I think I've done all the drugs and then stopped doing all the drugs. And that
I've done
was
a lot
bummer.
of drugs, and I quit them all the time. I'll revisit them to quit them again.
Yeah. I took a special vacation in a rehab facility just to give me an extra boost in my quitting of certain substances. But quitting vaping? Oh.
That was hard, dude. That was fucking hard.
Dude. So when I was quitting all the other stuff, now this was a long time ago, and rose-colored glasses and all that jazz. But I can't recall a specific moment where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. There were moments where I was like, this is painful. This sucks. I hate every moment of this. I was focusing on just not doing whatever today. So the thought of, I don't know if I can not do this forever really didn't come into my mind. But there were a couple moments quitting vaping where I had that honest conversation with myself. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And that was fucking scary, dude.
It is scary. I'm still fond of the nicotine buzz, but once I realized vapes were tacky, some girl said that, and that, the music stopped, and it's like, oh, God, I don't want to be tacky to this girl I don't know that well. After that, the process of giving in and going to buy one became a frustrating embarrassment. We covered how neutered the FDA is in our episode on Jack Owak. Our series about the Sacklers did this too, and we may cover McKinsey's role in the whole affair down the road. But how the hell is this allowed? How is a product that we ingest able to effectively avoid FDA approval and then market itself as being A, used for hundreds of years, B, a tool for quitting other addictive stuff, C, non-addictive, but so effective that it's hard to stop, or D, all of the above? Aside from the sale of products that make us die, which vapes do, also, what the hell is the FDA here to prevent if not the sale of addictive products? How has what must be one of the primary reasons for the FDA's existence been skirted so completely? At this point in our story, being the two fully grown adults that we were, we had a fine time going straight to the counter for our bubblegum yum yum vapes while ignoring everything else on the shelves in those vape shops.
Oh yeah, we were there. We tried them. And again, like Red Bill said, as adults, I wasn't a vulnerable child. I was a person with a 401k when I tried a vape.
Yeah, dude. Me too. Yeah, and oh man, was that undignified too. There was no I feel like there's a refined version of vaping for adults, and that is not what I was doing. It's like, can I get the one that all the 14-year-olds are buying?
Yeah, exactly. The people who present the IDs that look the sketchiest, what's their favorite flavor?
We've tried it all. Weed alternative. Ever heard of K2? Ever heard of salvia?
Ooh.
Bath salts? Okay, we heard
about
the guy eating someone's face. I assumed it was some heinous underground drug, but in truth, it was probably some guy named Greg that just bought the shit at a gas station along with those gas station boner pills and then came to eating a neighbor's face.
You see that guy? The one with an ear in his mouth? That's me. You're probably wondering how I got here. My name's Greg, and I've had a crazy week.
Anyway, statistically, if you're listening to this, you probably have tried these, like looking at our analytics. And if you're a few years newer to this planet than we are, you probably had lots more options to choose from than we did. In 2009, there were 4 widely available synthetic cannabinoids, like K2, to choose from. And in 2012, there were 150.
Yeah, you guys went fucking crazy.
Yeah, insane.
And you made cannabinoids that were normal and just got you kind of weed high. Yeah. Our cannabinoids? Fuck, dude.
They were weird and experimental.
My brain will never be the same.
I know. I got a bad batch of K2 at one point, and it's like, I'm fucked up forever for that, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But like I've said, we've been there. By 2023, I knew to ignore all the stuff that was just like weed, but was legally incense or potpourri.
Do you remember that? Going to the counter and the guy on the other side of the counter who looked like a guy working at the shop that you were going to would like coach you through what not to call the stuff.
And he'd wait
Like,
the whole time. He was so in on it.
There was such a fucking dance.
Yeah.
It was like, oh yes, I'm here to sample your finest tobacco water pipes.
Yeah. Where are your bubble blowers, sir?
Yes, I would like your finest not bong.
Yeah, right. They hated that word back then. So if I needed it, like I could, worst case scenario, I'm in a bind. I need some weed. I just carry on ignoring all this stuff on the shelves, and I just ask the guy at the counter for real weed. They always say no, even if they do have it, because if I'm coming from home, I look homeless, and if I'm coming from work, I look like a cop. But occasionally, I'll find this business shambolic balance, and they'll humor me. Or I'll just get some from a relative, which is a good anyway, honoring this selective ignorance and the haste encouraged by my addiction to nicotine, I had no trouble at all ignoring Kratom, which has apparently been there the whole time, since 2009.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I'd whiz right by the neon sign and just assume it was branding for more potpourri, which I've learned to not ask about. But then a friend asked what it was, and now I'm seeing it everywhere. In fact, I know people who are now regularly using this stuff. When the friend asked what it was, I joked that it was probably some sort of almost heroin, and then felt clever about the comment. And when the coworker, also a friend, asked me to run out and buy him some, I sort of recycled the same joke, saying, the stuff that's almost heroin? And he laughed, which was undeserved, but expected. You all know that not every one of my jokes land, but this is one of those people who will just volunteer the consolation laugh anyways. Good dude. But what came as a surprise was the dread I sensed in that laugh. That was weird.
Chapter 1. Kratom is sort of almost heroin.
Yeah, this is a bold statement. But yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
People buy it over the counter because it makes them feel different, and it's advertised as an aid for opioid cessation. More on that later. Usually it's a sedative, but at low doses, it can be a stimulant, and sometimes it can be both. More on that later also. To contextualize this statement somewhat, here's what Kratom isn't. Kratom is not a follow-up product to opiates. In fact, it's apparently been on the shelf since 2009. I mentioned that earlier. It's a big surprise for me anyways. I have this nightmare scenario in my head where the next 100 years is just a string of mortgage crises and opioid epidemics, but this is not sequential with Oxy. They were both on the market at the same time. I can't believe this is a relief to me, but somehow it is. Kratom isn't harvested from the opium poppy. It's derived from a plant that's in the same family as coffee. Kratom isn't widely tested or understood by health professionals, evidenced by the tone of every research paper we read for this episode, link in the bibliography. And it's also not widely understood by the people selling Kratom. Their lack of understanding is strongly suggested by the lack of dosing information on most Kratom product labels and the labyrinthian corporate structures of the companies who sell it. Someone like me might allege that convoluted corporate structures like these are employed to allow leadership a clean getaway should things go south. Kratom isn't easy to understand anyways. Depending on which plant your tea is coming from, the active ingredient concentration can vary wildly.
Is this going to be a lively and talkative evening? Will I be able to mingle with those not on Kratom? Or will I be puking, hallucinating, and ultimately succumbing to the tea that I just made in this Tupperware?
Yeah, jury's out, by the way. Drink it slow, if you've got it, I guess.
Yeah, one ambitious gulp, and next thing you know, an EMT is administering naloxone.
Which is another thing. Let's talk about what Kratom is now. Kratom isn't technically an opiate, but oh my God, does it do a good impression of an opiate.
Yeah, in fact, the FDA would disagree with your classification as far as calling the compounds found in kratom opioids based on how they bind to the brain's mu receptors in a February 2018 statement.
Yeah, they are saying, no. The active ingredients in Kratom are opioids.
Yes.
This is an opiate. Though it's sold as a material for making soap and aromatherapy, it happens to be responsive to naloxone. If you ever happen to overdose on it, just like you know what, and all of the once widely prescribed and highly addictive you know what else is, bing, bang, boom, same deal.
Yeah. It's been used for centuries in herbal remedies to relieve pain, just like certain other you-know-whats. And just like those, it's also pretty darn physically addictive.
Yes. In Assessment of Kratom Use Disorder and Withdrawal Among an Online Convenience Sample of U.S. Adults, the researchers, Kirsten E. Smith, Kelly E. Dunn, Jeff Rogers, Albert Garcia Romeo, Justin C. Strickland, and David H. Epstein.
We don't fuck with that all here.
We do not. Note that 29% of the users surveyed met the conditions for Kratom use disorder.
This sounds like we're describing addiction like a disease here, because we are. Yep. And the far and wide adoption of disease language for addiction is a hugely objectively positive development from the last few decades.
Yeah, this is a win. But anyways, of those 29% that met the requirements to be diagnosed with Kratom use disorder, withdrawal symptoms were mild for half, moderate for a fourth, and severe for a fourth.
Severe withdrawal symptoms include jerky movement of the limbs, disturbed sleep, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain and cramping, cravings, watery eyes, runny nose, hot flashes, sweating, diarrhea, tremors, restlessness, anger and irritability, nervousness and anxiety, depressed mood, maybe because you're shitting yourself to death, tension, and sadness.
Yep. All withdrawal symptoms, by the way, all those that Money Mike just listed, are shared with opiates, except for depressed mood and sadness. Sometimes Kratom is a stimulant after all, so getting off of it means it swings the other way.
I'd be pretty sad and depressed if I was shitting through my hot flashes, my nose was running, and all I wanted in life was to stop vomiting and have some more Kratom.
Dude, yeah. And also, like, one other symptom that isn't in here, like, I checked a lot of different sources to see how these things compare. Opiates, one of the withdrawal symptoms is yawning. And it's not mentioned anywhere as a symptom of Kratom withdrawal, but it's explicitly mentioned as a symptom of opiate withdrawal. And that is haunting. Imagine how bad it has to be for experts to be like, and oh yeah, there's going to be yawning.
Like a debilitating amount of yawning.
Horrible.
Yeah, some of our sources say the symptoms that Kratom and opiate withdrawal share are comparable in severity. Others say they're not quite as intense, but they last longer. It's sort of all over the place, but it's not good, and it's definitely something that you want to know before you start doing Kratom.
Yeah, right. And also, we're emphasizing this one again. This shit is new, relatively speaking. Though it appears to be less deadly, the studies that we found cited that there were indeed overdose deaths associated with the drug, and crucially, the Kratom that's available today is stronger than the stuff from last year, and the story keeps changing. A study from 2019 observes that opioid overdose is 1,000 times more likely than Kratom overdose because opioids cause suppressed breathing and Kratom doesn't.
Suppressed breathing is essentially when the drug depresses your cardiovascular system so much that you just stop breathing. And this is how a lot of opiate overdoses turn deadly.
Yeah, big time. You just relax so hard that you stop fucking breathing. And yet, a study from 2023 cites a rising prevalence of Kratom overdose involving, what do you know, repressed breathing. It does happen.
I don't know this for fact because I don't have a very active connection with that side of my family, but I'm pretty sure my uncle overdosed on Kratom last year.
Really? Wow.
Yes. Now, it's one of those things, right? That Kratom is like a legal opiate adjacent thing.
It's K2, but for opiates.
Right. So somebody who overdoses on not legal opiates and doesn't want to share with other people that they're doing illegal opiates might say they overdosed on Kratom. So I will put an asterisk and a hard allegedly next to that statement, but I am pretty sure that I do know of somebody who has overdosed on Kratom. Which leads us to Chapter 2, Combating Kratom.
Yeah, now for our listeners in New Zealand and Australia, there isn't much to do but sit back and watch. The stuff is rightly illegal there. It's legal in the UK, Germany, India, Spain, and Belgium. So, guys, you're in the same boat as us if you live in those countries. On the federal level in the US, I'm half convinced that no one gives a shit anymore. How can they not be jumpier than this? We're still getting over the opiate crisis now. Well, they won't regulate it for whatever reason. The FDA has warned the public against using Kratom as a dietary supplement. And years ago, the DEA labeled Kratom a drug of concern, but hasn't yet opted to label or restrict the drug. It's surreal to see this drug listed as a Schedule 1 narcotic alongside heroin, crack, and weed, which is there for racist reasons, in some states, and not even regulated by age in others. In fact, of the 6 states that have banned the drug, Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Vermont, Rhode Island, and Wisconsin, half of them, Arkansas, Indiana, and Rhode Island, are reviewing legislation that would repeal those bans. In Rhode Island, the bill that's being reviewed strips the health director of the ability to reinstate or maintain the ban on kratom altogether. So local regulation isn't going great. The group responsible in some significant part for this backslide is called the Global Kratom Coalition. For them, the federal government has undoubtedly been cheap. God knows how little it takes to sway the state-level people, but even before hiring the lobbyists, the U.S. is just easy for this kind of thing.
When you think about it, in fact, this is how most Schedule 1 narcotics have been introduced to the U.S. for the past few centuries. It comes ashore as a miracle drug that seems to have good effects, but we're not really quite sure how it works.
Yeah.
You have a headache? Some cocaine and codeine will fix you right up.
Watery eyes? Why, heroin will cure that and solve those pesky digestive issues.
Sore throat? My good man, go straight home, drink some whiskey, and smoke a pack of your favorite cigarettes. You'll be all better, or dead, by tomorrow. Either way, this is our last discussion on the matter.
Yep. The path taken by Big Tobacco here was really the prototype for most of this new stuff, though. You beat the regulations to market, and before long you have enough money to draw things out in court or lobby Congress. Alas, responsibility to regulate now falls to the free market. What happens next? Well, companies innovate. Left to their own devices and left to their own responsibility to self-regulate, they make the drugs stronger.
Chapter 3. 7-OH.
In 2023, HART, the Holistic Alternative Recovery Trust, was founded and has worked in collaboration with Trump's Director of National Drug Control Policy from his first term. Last year, they began an advocacy collab with AKA, the American Kratom Association, which is chaired by former Arizona Republican Congressman Matt Salmon. There sure is an inclination to get public officials on board with these efforts, isn't there? It's almost like this was part of some lobbying thing from back in the day.
Yeah, maybe so. Who knows?
What's going on here? They held a press event to advocate for appropriate regulation of kratom and kratom derivatives, and were met with a surprising opponent, the Global Kratom Coalition, which we mentioned a chapter ago. You see, the active ingredient in kratom are metragonine and 7-hydroxymetragonine, which target the brain's opioid receptors. This means that kratom makes love to your brain the same way as OxyContin did, just not quite as well, not enough concentration. Enter 7-OH, which is a concentrate of 7-hydroxymetragonine, which clocks in at about 30 times more potent than morphine at the opioid receptors.
Little science break here. Even when kratom diddles the opioid receptors, addiction is possible and it can be severe. Kratom on its own has killed people and has been noted as causing comparable withdrawals to opiates.
Yes.
This stuff is batting at a opiate level.
Yep.
The American Kratom Association has softened its bullish stance on 7-OH, which Abhishek Sharma, a scientist at the University of Florida, called legal morphine, saying that some of the manufacturers need to be more responsible, but it's very apparent that these efforts are being made in the vein of self-preservation. Though
Yes.
7-OH is technically just the synthesized active ingredient in Kratom, they continually assert that 7-OH products aren't Kratom after all, because Kratom only has a little 7-OH.
Yeah. Hart, on the other hand, is still all in, bemoaning the risk of banning 7-OH because of what an effective cessation aid it can be for those hooked on opiates. Make note, everyone, if it's time to turn your life around, go down to your nearest smoke shop and keep your eyes peeled for 7-OH products like Roxy tablets, which come in little white pill bottles. For the love of God, don't buy these.
Oh my God,
Perks.
dude, they're fucking shameless.
Yep, Perks are also apparently an excellent cessation aid. No covert marketing happening there. Oh, how's about Hydro 7s or anything with sippers or syrup in the name?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know how to wrap this besides warning anyone listening not to ingest any of these products, especially those of you trying to beat opioid dependence. I'm so sorry, but none of these companies are your friend. I know it's not easy, but seek methadone before purchasing any Kratom products, Kratom or 7-OH, and for the love of God, avoid 7-OH at all goddamn cost.
Yeah, this whole industry is a perfect storm of supplement regulation, which we dove into in our Jack Owalk episode, which is horrible, and the thing that Jack Owalk was peddling couldn't actually kill you in normal doses.
Yeah.
It is that, gas station intoxicants, and vape marketing.
That's it, dude.
I will say something about cessation products. And this might be a bit of a tangent.
It's okay.
And I'm also not an expert. There is a school of thought called harm reduction. Essentially, if you have a heroin addict and your heroin addict gets off heroin and gets hooked on weed instead, like, that is good. We shouldn't be afraid to ramp down that activity, right? My experience, and this isn't the subject of our podcast, and I also don't have a doctorate, so grain of salt. I think that slope works both ways. Can certain cessation products be helpful in harm reduction if you're a believer in the harm reduction method? Maybe.
Big maybe.
Are they also great conduits to get someone who's off heroin back into heroin? Definitely.
Yeah.
I personally, and again, this is a small-ish sample size, I don't know anyone who has been a heroin addict and used something like Kratom to get off heroin. They all either quit or went to rehab. Some might have used methadone for a short period of time. I do know heroin addicts that got off heroin a couple of years later, found Kratom, and then found their way back to heroin.
Yep.
So I say all that to say, a vape is not a cessation thing. I think, just like my last example, I know way more people that started vaping and just became nicotine addicts than those who were smoking and got off cigarettes into vaping and then quit cold turkey. I've never seen that happen.
Yep. Most of our sources, too, said that as a cessation aid for opiates, it's no good because it's too damn dangerous. Kratom, not 7-OH.
Yeah, well, because it gets you high.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Gets you high as shit.
Yeah. And it gets you high in the same way that stronger opiates get you high. So if you get high on Kratom, there, like any escalation behavior, for a time it might be okay, but eventually you will want the stronger thing. Or you might want the stronger thing. Either way, don't use these products.
Don't use them.
Say, if it's clearly named a drug name like Roxy's or Perks, and it's being sold in a dirty gas station, next to the boner pills, yeah, maybe that's not something that you need to put in your body.
I would tell you to try the boner pills first.
Yeah.
The one thing that gives me some comfort here is you don't have a doctor telling you to take this the way that you did with opiates. But that doesn't make it less dangerous, and it doesn't mean that the people peddling this shit weren't angry about the opioid crisis because they didn't get to get in on the money-making side of it. That is really what this looks like. So, yeah, thanks for listening. Our sources are in the down there thingy. As mentioned, the American Kratom Association, who I feel are filthy grifters not to be trusted, have sought to distance themselves from the coming 708 shitstorm by compiling a list of especially irresponsible 708 manufacturers. And although we hope AKA fails in its mission to promote access to Kratom, we've included their list of bad actors in our sources just so you know which 708 products to be especially wary of if you hear friends mention them.
Yeah. Arm yourself with knowledge, like, comment, and subscribe, and tune in for our next series. We love you all, and goodbye.